Hello and welcome everyone, a new episode of Money Means Business. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is currently in a visit to China as he was invited by his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to attend the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympic Games. On the sidelines of the Olympic Games and of the ceremony and of the banquet which was held by the Chinese president to welcome all the world leaders and heads of government who came to participate in this event, a number of meetings were held by the president. On top of the list was the summit talks between President Sisi and his Chinese counterpart. We are going to speak in detail about what happened there, about the talks, particularly the economic and investment, trade, commercial fields. But we are going first to take a quick look in the coming report about the trade and investment relations which are taking place between Egypt and China, which witnessed a leap in the past few years. Right after this, we are going to be back with more.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived in the People's Republic of China to attend the opening ceremony of the 24th Winter Olympics, which will be held in the Chinese capital Beijing. Ambassador Bassam, President's participation in this huge global sporting event came at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping in light of the close and strategic relations between Egypt and China. Ambassador Mohammad Higazi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, commented on the President's visit to the opening of the Winter Games and said that it's about close and strategic relations based on mutual respect and non-interference in internal affairs, explaining that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has his ability and standing with the Chinese leadership. He met with the Chinese President repeatedly, and Egypt occupies a special position whether towards Africa or the Arab world. The value of trade between Egypt and China grew by 18.2% during the first 10 months of 2021 to record $12.024 billion, compared to $10.17 billion during the same period in 2020, with an increase of $1.854 billion. The Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics stated that the value of trade between the two countries increased by 23.6% during October to reach $1.17 billion, compared to $946.972 million in October 2020. China accounts for 11.9% of the total value of Egypt's foreign trade during the first 10 months of last year, and the trade balance is in China's favor by about $9.473 billion. The value of Egyptian exports to China witnessed a boom during the period from January to October 2021 to reach $1.275 billion, compared to $583.076 million during the same period in 2020, a growth of 118.7%. China accounts for 3.8% of the total Egyptian exports to the world, amounting to $33.69 billion during the first 10 months of 2021. The value of Egypt's exports of fuel, mineral oils, and their distillation products to China amounted to about $885.1 million, and from fruits about $80.9 million, and from prepared foods for animals about $59.5 million, and from boilers, machines, devices, and automatic tools about $48.8 million. China seeks to take advantage of the advantages enjoyed by Egypt, including the huge market that includes more than 100 million consumers, in addition to being a gateway to more than 1 billion consumers residing in countries where goods produced in Egypt enjoy preferential treatment, such as the European Union countries, COMESA, Arab countries, and the United States. Among the strategic and political benefits for Egypt from closer relations with China is the establishment of a strategic partnership between Egypt and the second largest economy in the world that will pave the way for many projects to set Egypt's feet as a pivotal and effective country in the Middle East and North Africa, as well as speeding up the establishment of logistic projects and areas for ship services and industries related to transport, maritime along the axis of the Suez Canal to maximize the benefit of the Chinese Silk Road and the new Suez Canal in revitalizing the movement of trade with the countries of the world. The value of Egypt's imports from China during the period from January to October 2021 increased by 12.1% to record $10,749 billion compared to $9,587 billion during the same period in 2020. The value of Egyptian imports from China increased during October by 16.2% to reach $1,029 billion compared to $885,493 million in October 2020. China came on top of the countries exporting to Egypt during the first 10 months of 2021, accounting for 15.9% of the value of Egyptian imports. Egyptian imports of fibers from China increased by 83.6%, reaching $547,119 million compared to $197,986 million. Egypt's imports of pharmaceutical products from China jumped to a record $267.83 million compared to $53,000 million, with a growth of 405.3%, and from cars, tractors, bikes, and their parts by 30.7%, reaching $674,299 million compared to $516,083 million. Egypt's imports of boilers, machinery, mechanical devices, and their parts from China grew by 17.9% during the first 10 months of 2021 to about $1,536 billion, compared to $1,303 billion during the same period last year, and from machines, electrical appliances, and their parts to about $2,874 billion compared to $2.86 billion, an increase of 0.5%.
Welcome back. And to shed more light on the important visit by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to China and of the summit talks which took place between the president and his Chinese counterpart, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone Ambassador Hani Abdelaziz, former Assistant Secretary General of the UN. A very good evening to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening, madam.
Sir, as I said, we are talking about a very important visit by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to China upon the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping. First, before going into more details, how do you see, sir, the timing of the visit and tackling in particular the trade, investment and commercial relations in the summit talks which took place between the two leaders?
Okay. Let me say first, it's not only an important visit. It's not the first visit of the head of state, President Sisi, to China. The question is the timing at a moment where first Egypt has no participation in the Winter Olympics at all. Therefore, it's a political visit, and that's the importance of it. It's an important political visit at a time where many countries are boycotting the participation in this Winter Olympics held in China, and thus it's sending a clear, not subtle, no, it's a clear message to many countries related to the diversity Egypt wants to maintain in its international relations, in its regional relations, north, south, and east to west. India today, for example, has declared it's boycotting. U.S. also is boycotting, and many other countries. It's a very strange thing to involve, politics at this level in such important sport event, but that's the reality. And the Egyptian head of state and Egyptian diplomacy has seized the opportunity to mark and underline that they are keeping an equal distance in their international relations based on the real interest of Egypt and only the interest of Egypt.
Sir, of course, we cannot separate politics from economy. And President Xi Jinping said a very important statement today, speaking about describing the relations with Egypt as a model for the Chinese-Arab relations, Chinese-African relations, Chinese and developing countries relations, as Egypt plays an active and positive role, whether on the Arab or the African arenas, in addition to, of course, to developing and emerging economies too. They tackled also the importance of the Suez Canal economic zone and how Egypt can be the gate for China to the African continent at large. Would you please elaborate on that, sir?
Okay, you are touching the main subject and the main interesting object of such a visit. And until today, and to be very honest with you, I had certain doubts about the political and attitude of China, which I expressed before in two meetings I had at the top level of the Central Communist Party. First of all, I hope, and I think it has been discussed, I hope, not in the secrets of gods, the question of the attitude of China towards the Renaissance Dam. And I hope that this situation now will be more moderate, more balanced, and look in a more interesting way, a more fair way, to the survival issue it represents to Egypt. That's an important, that's a very important subject, and I expect this meeting to lead to something into this direction, even if not declared openly. Second, Egypt cannot ignore the second most powerful economic country in the world, which is progressing very fast in terms of technology. We know that China is very, very developed in terms of space technology, and Egypt has an interest, whatever is our limited role in that, but we have ambitions in this direction, and there might be some dimension for cooperation. But the main interest I would see now is the transfer of technology in the realistic way in order to boost Egyptian export, industrial export, particularly worldwide. And I expect that China will come, and I mentioned it before at the top level of previous contacts, that China established joint vocational training centers in Egypt in advanced technologies to allow Egyptians to learn the new technique and the Chinese discipline in production to provide quality and cost-effective results.
And because of this, sir, exchanging experiences in scientific research, in pharmaceutical studies and pharmaceutical industries, and also climate change or protecting the environment were among the issues which were discussed today in the talks between President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and his Chinese counterpart in Beijing. But here we are talking about something which is going to be implemented on the ground. It's going to be tangible on the ground. The Sino-Egyptian cooperation in pharmaceutical studies, when the Sinovac, the Chinese vaccine for COVID-19, already we are producing here in Egypt right now. And to add to this, the preparations of the COP27, which is going to be hosted by Sharm el-Sheikh later this year. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that Sharm el-Sheikh is going to be a green city, so we are going to have the electric cars with the help of our allies, China. And this is to say that it's not something in theory, but no, it's implemented on the ground. How do you see those two examples, sir?
I say it's marvelous example, and you're absolutely right. It's not to please you, it's the reality. First of all, we are producing now the two Chinese vaccine, which proved to be very efficient, contrary to the obstacle raised by certain Western countries in front of adopting those vaccines. Egypt produces them already. Egypt has vaccinated, I think, between 40 to 50 million of its population with those two vaccines and other vaccines too. and is opening I would say, its cooperation with other African countries who cannot have or do not have the technical capabilities to manufacture this vaccine by themselves. Therefore, it's a vivid, good example of cooperation, with tripartite cooperation between China, Egypt, and other African countries. It's a very important. The question of the railway, definitely Egypt needs to have a successful meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh this year, I believe in September, concerning climate changes. It's an important meeting because we follow the meeting held in Britain last year in 2021, and the contribution and participation of China and many other countries effectively in this is extremely important, not only for the name of Egypt and its capacity to hold such a meeting, but as an example of the leading role, and I'm not exaggerating my words, the leading role Egypt is taking in developing new and renewable sources of energy. I think we are the second country, not the first country in the world today in the use of solar energy, with the farm built in Aswan, which is the largest one in the world. I know too that Egypt has adopted the vice president of one of the international organizations dealing with new sources of energy, confirming its leading role. And no, what you said is absolutely right, precise, and I join my voice to yours in those matters.
Thank you very much, sir. Ambassador Hani Abdelaziz, former Assistant Secretary General of the UN. Have a very good night, and thank you very much for your input.
Thank you to you, madam.
Thank you. When it comes to COVID-19, the pandemic had its negative repercussions on all economies worldwide. But fortunately, Egypt did it, and our economy proved that it is a strong one, and we are overpassing those negative repercussions over our economy with working with taking into consideration that nothing is going to hinder the Egyptian sustainable development process. To shed more light on this and to have more details about how the international financial entities look at the Egyptian economy, we are going to live for a few minutes in the coming reports, and then we are going to turn back with more.
In light of the economic successes achieved by Egypt during the year 2021, and in continuation of this approach, the International Monetary Fund raised its expectations for the Egyptian economy by 0.4% for the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 to 5.6%, and the same for the following fiscal year. Meanwhile, the fund reduced its forecast for the global economic growth in 2022 by 0.5% to 4.4%, from its October 2021 expectations due to the lower expectations for the growth of the two largest economies in the world, America and China. The IMF raised its forecast for the growth of the economies of the Middle East and North Africa by 0.3% to 4.4% in 2022. It also expected that the region's growth to decline in 2023 to 3.4%. The fund kept its forecast for the growth of the Saudi economy in 2022 at 4.8%, while it will drop significantly to 2.8% in 2023. The fund fixed its forecast for the growth of the Egyptian economy in 2022 and 2023 at 5.6%. Dr. Mohamed Maït, Minister of Finance, confirmed that the International Monetary Fund's announcement that it raised its estimates of the growth rate of the Egyptian economy in 2022 to 5.6% instead of 5.2% last October is a new testimony of confidence in the solidity of the Egyptian economy and its ability to cohesion and withstand challenges, globalization, and a gradual recovery from the corona crisis. At a time when his estimates for the growth of the global economy fell by 5%, Egypt becomes the only oil-importing country that achieves positive growth. He explained that the economic reform program contributed to strengthening the structure of the national economy, mitigating the severity of the shock, and containing the negative effects of the corona pandemic. He explained that the economic reform program contributed to strengthening the structure of the national economy, mitigating the severity of the shock, and containing the negative effects of the corona pandemic. In the same context, Ahmed Kojak, Deputy Minister of Financial Policies and International Development, said that Egypt is the only country in the Middle East and Africa that has retained the confidence of all three global rating institutions, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, during one of the most difficult periods in the economy, the world under the pandemic. He also pointed out that this report confirms the confidence of IMF experts in the performance of the national economy in light of the government's increasing interest in opening new development horizons that contribute to strengthening the participation of the private sector in development projects. This will help provide new job opportunities, leading to higher growth rates. In light of the uncertainty in light of supply chain disruptions, fluctuations in oil prices, and fears of the emergence of the corona pandemic, the Director General of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, announced that the fund's expectations for global economic growth will likely decrease due to the emergence of the new coronavirus Omicron. The fund stated that Omicron threatens a setback in the initial recovery path, while high inflation rates will continue for a longer period than expected. The fund believes that the advanced economies raising interest rates to combat inflation rates may generate risks to financial stability and capital flows to emerging and developing markets, focusing on the risk of increasing debt levels significantly in the past 2 years. She added that monetary policy in many countries may need a strict path to reduce inflation pressures. In its report on the outlook for the global economy, the International Monetary Fund lowered its forecast for the U.S. economic growth for the current year at a rate of 1.2% from last October's forecast to 4%. The fund attributed this to disruptions caused by the pandemic, which led to disruptions in supply chains. Meanwhile, financial pressures from real estate developers lowered China's growth forecast from 5.6% to 4.8%.
Welcome back. Before going into more details and to have just this breaking news from Morocco, the whole world was looking at Ryan's fate. Ryan is out of the well after 5 days. Just a few minutes ago, he was received by the ambulance car and doctors, and above all, his father. We wish to hear more good news about Ryan, and we wish that all the prayers of all people around the world were met with an answer of yes, of mercy upon the 5-year-old kid who is there under the rubble for 5 days now. Well, God save you, Ryan, and we wish to know more. We are going to follow minute by minute what's going on with him, as this is the story which occupied the hearts and minds of the whole world for the past 5 days. Back to Money Means Business, and back to our economy, and back to the IMF latest report regarding the Egyptian economy and about the budget of the coming fiscal year, which witnessed an increase of the allocations for the education and health sectors, but also we achieved a surplus of 3.2 billion Egyptian pounds. To shed more light on this, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone former commercial minister, Mr. Ayoub Mahmoud Ayoub. Mr. Ayoub, hello, sir.
Hello, good evening to you and to the viewers.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are speaking about the Egyptian economy, which proved to be that strong in front of a global challenge, which is the repercussions of COVID-19 pandemic, and the latest statements which were released by the cabinet speaking about the budget of the coming fiscal year, achieving 3.2 billion Egyptian pound surplus, despite the allocations increase in the two sectors of education and health. Would you please, sir, elaborate on that? And if you please give me some reasons behind the success of the Egyptian economy to overpass these difficulties.
Clearly, the Egyptian economy is going steadily towards more progress and more growth. What we have seen in the new budget, which is prepared now and which will be presented to the parliament and then the president will decree it, is that increase in the budget of the allocations of education and health. This is a very important feature of the new budget. Why? Because education and health are, I can say, the 2 feet of any economy to progress. This is one thing which is very important. Second thing is that despite the COVID, what we have seen during the last 2 or 3 years in the world, we find that the Egyptian economy is steadily growing at phenomenal growth rates, which was not seen in other countries of the world. This is the reason why the good planning and good implementation of the budget in the last years the result was that we have now a growth rate which is phenomenal. What is important for us is that the allocations of education and health are very clearly increased so that it enables these very important 2 sectors to grow in the right direction. Another thing which we have to take into consideration is that it is based on the programs and performance with a view to the goals of the economic and social development plan, which was prepared a couple of years ago. Second thing is that we have seen with the finance for the small and very small projects by the finance will be from the receipts of the budget of the state budget. This will ensure that very small business is funded in place, and also you know that the very small business constitutes a big proportion in the economy as a whole, but it is not registered. Now it will be registered and it will come under the umbrella of the state, and it will be easier for the new generation to get finance for their very small projects, so it will help their own and the other and also the overall growth of the economy. This is very important for the new generation because it will reflect on employment rates. It will be increased, and it will decrease the inflation, which we are always caring. The government is always caring not to increase more than the growth rates in the economy. We must look to the new budget as a roadmap for the next year, which will begin this year, next financial year, which will be start in July.
Yes, sir. The word sustainability, it's one of the key words, as we are not speaking about things which would last for a few years, but we are talking about 2030, 2060, even a sustainable development agenda. Sir, if you please, I'd like to implement what we said on the ground, because today there was a very important tour by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and he was accompanied by His Excellency also Asim Al-Gazzar, Minister of Housing, and they were following up the pace of work in many of the national mega projects in the new Alamein city. Prime Minister Madbouli said that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is giving his directives all the time to end or to fulfill the national projects on time. Here, this is one of the big examples, one of the new smart cities we are having, the new Alamein city. Sir, how do you see going in the two directions in parallel, to take into consideration that the SMEs are very important, and in the same time to continue with fulfilling on time the mega projects? On top of the list are the smart cities scattered all over Egypt, and today one of the examples was the new Alamein city.
New Alamein city is a very important hub. It will be a very important hub for development in the western part of Egypt. That is, it will be we can say it will be the capital of development in the western part of Egypt. When the Prime Minister himself goes to Alamein city and invites important ministers to accompany him, this means that the government is taking care, is very keen to find real development, and it is at the same time it is asking for private business and private investors to come to Alamein and this part of Egypt to explore and to begin the work to implement the state budget and also the economic and social development plan. It is very important in the short term and in the longer term. Mm-hmm. This is one thing. Other thing is that this goes parallel while bigger projects are being implemented, whether in the northern Egypt or in the south Egypt. President has been to Aswan and to Bani Suef and to other parts of Egypt to implement and to launch many development projects which will be reflected on the growth rate in the upper Egypt, and it will be reflected also in employment and in inflation, and most importantly on the growth rate, the overall growth rate for the next financial year, which starts in July. When the Prime Minister goes and begins this process, this means that a green light is there for the private business and for the public sector to begin launching their projects and implement it as per the roadmap which was planned by the government and which was stated by the Prime Minister himself during the last meeting in Alamein. We hope that this will be reflected on the growth rate for this financial year.
And job opportunities too, as today it was also announced that the new Alamein city new projects are going to afford 100,000 job opportunities, and this is not an easy job. This is not a small number. Well, former Commercial Minister Ayoub Mahmoud Ayoub, thank you very much for your input, sir. Have a very good night. Right after this, we are going to turn back with the last part of our episode, so stay tuned.
At the end of its meeting last Thursday, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Egypt decided to fix the overnight deposit and lending interest rate and the central bank's main operation rate at 8.25%, 9.25% and 8.75% respectively, and the credit and discount rate at 8.75%. In times of economic slowdown and high inflation rates, Egyptians resort to employing their surplus funds in safe and profitable investment havens that achieve a return that absorbs the inflationary effects, and these investment vessels develop financial resources through several means. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Prime Minister, received Mustafa Ghalib, Governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, and his accompanying delegation. The meeting was attended by Tariq Amir, Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, and Dr. Ahmed Naif Al-Dulaimi, Ambassador of the Republic of Iraq in Cairo. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli began the meeting emphasizing the cooperation with brotherly Iraq, adding that the projects that were implemented in Egypt have gained Egyptian companies distinguished experience, and that Egypt is ready to immediately start implementing the projects related to the reconstruction of Iraq that had previously been consulted. The main PMI for Egypt fell last January to record 47.9 points compared to 49 points last December, recording the lowest reading since April 2021, coinciding with the fastest decline in production rates since June 2020. The index data indicated a decline in the level of the non-oil economy at the beginning of the year, amid weak customer demand and inflationary pressures, while the volume of new business decreased. The report added that there was a slowdown in the construction, wholesale and retail sectors during last January. The government is working on a plan and vision to eliminate the phenomenon of the three-wheeled tuk-tuk, which has invaded Egyptian streets, neighborhoods and villages in the last 15 years. the government began taking real measures towards implementing its plan to eliminate the tuk-tuk, and this was confirmed by the statements of Naveen Gama, Minister of Trade and Industry, in which she said the decision to prevent the import of three-wheeled vehicle components came in order to work on limiting the number of vehicles. She is currently working in Egypt as a result of the lack of an official number for her. The minister added that there is a vision to replace the three-wheeled vehicle, popularly known as the tuk-tuk, with a four-wheeled vehicle, which is more elegant and safer for its users and driver. The Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah, stated that Egypt's petroleum exports jumped by 84.3% during the past year 2021 on an annual basis, recording $12.9 billion. The value of Egypt's oil exports was $7 billion in 2020. Egypt's exports of natural and liquefied gas also jumped last year by 550% on an annual basis to reach $3.9 billion compared to $600 million in 2020. Petroleum and petrochemical products grew by 42.5% last year to reach $5.7 billion compared to $4 billion in 2020. Ghada Shalabi, Deputy Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, announced that tourism revenues in Egypt exceeded $13 billion in 2021, bringing it back to pre-corona pandemic levels. He added that tourism revenues decreased by more than 69% during 2020 due to the spread of the coronavirus to fall to about $4 billion compared to more than $13 billion in 2019. Due to the suspension of air traffic and travel world and the closure of borders between countries. It is known that tourism contributes 15% of Egypt's economic output and is a major source of foreign exchange, along with the Suez Canal, expatriates, remittances, and exports. The World Gold Council announced that the Egyptians' demand for gold jewelry in 2021 increased by 42% to 27.9 tons compared to 19.7 tons in 2020, which is equivalent to about $1.6 billion without calculating workmanship. Egypt's consumption of gold, works, bullion, and labor increased by 39% last year on an annual basis, reaching 30.3 tons compared to 21.9 tons in 2020. In 2019, Egyptians' purchases of gold jewelry amounted to 26.5 tons, while they amounted to about 19.7 tons in 2020 and reached 27.9 tons last year.
Welcome back. Just a reminder of the breaking news we had. Ryan is out of the will. Ryan is now with his dad and with the medical teams. He is alive and he was transferred to a hospital after spending 5 days in a well, in a 32-meter deep well in Morocco. The whole world was waiting for this moment and it finally happened. Ryan is out. Well, to continue with the last part of our episode, we are very much delighted to have with us Mr. Tariq Muhyiddin, our economic expert. A very good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Amin. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are speaking about the recovery of the Egyptian economy and how this is reflected on the tourism sector. When it comes to tourism, tourism is playing a big role in the development of our economy. And when the tourism sector is enjoying a healthy recovery, meaning that this is going to be a great positive impact on our economy. Would you please, sir, elaborate?
Good evening, Mr. Amin. Congratulations for, hello?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Congratulations for Egypt people. The important for economy of human and social life is invested into interest presenting about plans and projects to advance the life of every individual in various societies to achieve social welfare. It is important life in the, considered it as one of the basic pillars as the individual understand he will be on the first stage. Second, related the Egypt economy now. What means the state general budget is defined as a proof to deals and estimated statement that contains the public revenue and the state expected to collect and the public expected to need to spend during the next fiscal year. The budget is considered as the financial program of the plan which the start operate of the next fiscal year in order to achievement specific goals. Within the framework was the general plan of the economic and social development of the countries. Raise the countries already revenue from where? Revenue from taxes, from tourism. Tourism is very important now in Egypt now, more than $14 million and other protect leading and sale financial assets and foreign and the issue other share for bills. Expenses also, expenses of the wages and wages and salaries, employee, purchase of goods and services, benefits and support grant of social benefits, other expenses such as already purchase of the non-financial assets investment and pay the domestic and foreign loans. Second, now already research about the last year 2013 when the amount is about 2013, the amount already about 13.6 billion and even in the raise of 45 million in February. This is already about Egypt economic. Already increased already about the state general budget 2,461 billion, 14 million this year 22. And already compared between last year, big difference between last year and about state general budget. Last year already 2001, 1,392 million already increased for education, increased for healthy related to corona, COVID.
Well, Mr. Tariq Mohyeddin, our economic expert, thank you very much for your input, sir, and have a very good night. And by this, we come to an end to this episode of Money Means Business. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching. On behalf of my dear colleague Nermeen Nadeem, Kamel Ali, and myself, Nermeen Abdurrahman, many thanks for watching.